nearly 38 years serving the wild tigers of India. In the process, he has written more than 20 books, presented nearly a dozen films for both the BBC and several other international television networks, created one of the first truly wildlife non-governmental organizations, the Ranthambore Foundation, and served nearly 200 policy-making committees of both federal and state governments, including one constituted by the Supreme Court of India. He is today a severe critic of government policy regarding tigers, wildlife, and the habitat they live in. He continues to campaign and fight for a new way of thinking and action in the governance of the natural world in India. Bittu Sehgal, the founding editor of Sanctuary Asia and Kids for Tigers, is at the forefront of the battle to protect India from the worst impacts of climate change. His constituency is children, and he has held biodiversity climate change workshops for pre-primary children and for policymakers, politicians, and industry heads. In his view, kids understand issues best, and he wants parents and kids to learn firsthand how to be a part of the conservation movement and save wildlife so that our children enjoy a happier, safer future. May I please request them to come on stage.
Are we on? We are. So, I'm Bittu and that's Valu. All right? Look, this book, I reviewed this book some time ago, and one of the points I made when I reviewed this book was that Dr. Salim Ali was given an honorary doctorate for all the work he's done on birds. I have no idea why some university hasn't done the same for this guy. Valmik Thapar, quite honestly, he only looks part human. He's the closest thing I know to a tiger that walks on two legs. He thinks like one, he acts like one, don't get on his wrong side. And the truth is that he knows what tigers need to survive. He knows what the tiger needs to survive. This is one reason why he's very unpopular with politicians, bureaucrats, and businessmen. They don't like him. They love him actually, individually, personally, but as institutions they hate him because he comes in the way of them making very quick money, very dubious money. Right now, under the paws of that tiger are sitting things like coal, lignite, iron ore, bauxite, uranium, name it. Also on top of that tiger, that canopy, it's the quickest way to make money. Indonesia is doing it. They're cutting those forests down and turning it into palm oil. And what Valmik, and I can say this with some authority, I've known him for 40 years now. We were born virtually, our wildlife lives began under the banyan tree in Ranthambore 40 years ago. And we both have a common tiger guru called Fateh Singh Rathore, who has passed away. But I won't take much more time. I think Valu tells his own story much better than anyone else does, and he should tell you about this book. It is the ultimate tiger book. It is without doubt the ultimate tiger book. Valu.
Can I have as many lights off as possible so they don't blind me in the eyes? Ladies and gentlemen, I actually am going to focus on this book because that was the primary purpose of coming here. Bittu and I, over 38 years, have grown old, serving tigers. So while we grow old and we're not that active, we disappear into all kinds of different things that we believe in. And one of the things that I wanted to get into for the last 3 years, and I haven't really surfaced till this book surfaced, has been the literature of the tiger. Soon after, paper was first used in India to talk about the tiger. And from it came tiger fire. So you're very quickly seeing lots of different pictures that are a part of the book, which I will talk you through, and then we'll get into some questions. My affair with the tiger is about Ranthambore. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't gone to Ranthambore, the setting, and seen tigers just somewhere in the Western Ghats. I don't know whether my relationship would have developed the way it did. So I thank the setting of Ranthambore, this very mysterious past, the memories of man that entangled me with the life of the tiger. And it is something special for those of you who've spent time there to see tigers walking below the ramparts of a fort whose history may be even more than 1,000 years old. And it has incredible vignettes of tigers doing all kinds of things like this one, walking on a fallen tree. And it's a dry deciduous forest, so it makes it much easier to see tigers. The visibility is really good. Sometimes they can charge you and they come at full pelt, but they are very, very kind to the human being, and very seldom do they complete the charge. These are mock charges. The beauty of the tiger within this ecological system was something very, very special to me. And at some level, it is what gave me the ability to pursue maybe 1,000 books that were written between the 16th century to present day time on the tiger, and pull out and extract the very best and most exciting narratives that I could find. And it was the power, the beauty and the ferocity of this animal. And unfortunately, we are going to try and show you a few film clips which I had embedded in this audiovisual, but we can't play them together for some technical reason. So here's one coming of tigers fighting. What's amazing, it's the male tiger that limps away after the females give him a good thrashing. And she doesn't allow him near. And it's a rare, unique encounters. And this is why Ranthambore became so special. The tigers rewrote their natural history for the world to see through Ranthambore. And it was in the early 80s that all this started. Now, of course, there are places like Taroba, which are showing the most incredible rare encounters, probably even more than Ranthambore. That's when I started, you won't believe it. Now I look like a sumo wrestler, but then I was quite trim and slim. And that was my tiger guru, and we worked together uninterrupted through his whole life. So this was 1976, the first year I ever went to Ranthambore. And what was amazing about Fateh Singh Rathore, and a lot of you have heard about him, is that he welcomed someone who came from the outside world. You didn't have to be a government officer to be his friend. You could be anyone, and everyone was an equal, and everyone was encouraged and welcomed. And that was great for me because it made my life. I could leave whatever I was doing in Delhi and pursue tigers whichever way I wanted. So the first part of this book is encyclopedic. It's a little bit about how the tiger evolved so many million years ago. The pine martens. This animal results in this tiger who can take on rhinoceros. This is a 19th century old lithograph engraving that I found. I've always wanted to find a tiger interacting with a rhino, so I found something in one of the old British newspapers, which is remarkable. Because this book is also about old visuals. I had to put in as much time in finding the extracts as finding the old visuals that accompany this book, to give a feel of the power of this animal, how it evolved, how it became one of the most powerful land predators that exist. And there was a great cult around it because of this great power and beauty. It was worshipped right across India. It was the vehicle for the goddesses, and there was a cult which still has to be interpreted in terms of how human beings viewed this animal as a savior, as a defeater of evil, as a bringer of light on a planet which had a lot of darkness. That's what they believed. The first narratives are in the Mughal times, when a lot of these tigers were hunted, and you get in the Akbarnama, the Babarnama, and in many of the narratives of Jahangir, a lot of the tiger hunts. I'm of the view, now my aunt who's a historian tells me I'm turning a little bit into a historian. I am of the view that many of these hunts were stage managed, Many of these hunts were not natural hunts, and the Mughals in their private hunting grounds, which were 100 to 400 square kilometers, would throw in the big cats and hunt them. And very seldom do you find in Mughal miniature painting the thick forests of India, either painted or descriptions about those forests, because I don't believe the Mughal emperors wanted to get mosquito bitten or leech bitten or anything of that, and they remained on the edges, and their private hunting grounds were their playgrounds for pleasure, for leisure, and for hunting. And there are lovely, lovely paintings that illustrate tigers that they found, and maybe some of these encounters were with wild tigers, which were accidental, but the rest, in my opinion, were carefully planned and strategized. The narratives of a plain hunting description change when the British come. And again, I believe, and I'm learning this, you always are, even at the age of 61, you keep on learning, and that humility everyone has to have. So I learned about the fact that maybe in the Mughal times, everything was much tamer in terms of what they did with their hunts. It changes with the British, because the British enter India to loot and plunder it. They need the wood for their naval fleets. They need wood for our railway sleepers. They walk into the forest. And when they do that, they see the incredible richness of Indian wildlife and everything that happens. So the elephant is a really important vehicle for them while they cut trees. But then the narratives are about how they see tigers, how tigers attack them, how tigers interact with other animals. So there's a whole section in this book which is about the first British, how they come in, what they see, man-eating, combats between man and tiger. Everything is a part of it, and even some amazing encounters that you will read about, where a man on a machang gets up in the morning and finds a dead tiger with a dead python wrapped around it. So I found a huge problem find the right kind of drawing to match this narrative with. But the narratives are amazing, astounding to read in these 500 years, what people saw, how they lived, how the roads were, how they moved from one place to another, and you suddenly found a tiger walking across. Lots of stuff of how the beaters surrounded tigers, how the tiger attacked the beater. Incredible lithographs with the most beautiful encounters. This one is from Captain Thomas Williamson's book, and it's about wild dog pack attacking a tiger, and it was done in 1807, and it's his narratives from 1780 to 1790. And the first vehicles when they came in, how people went in them, and how these were used to hunt more and to increase hunting records. People imagined that tigers could throw a cow around the back and take it away, and this was also etched out. This is not what the tiger does, but it is a remarkable bit of illustration that I thought is really important to show those times in terms of how people looked at the power of this animal. And then of course there are paintings that have come into the picture. These are some paintings from Ranthambore done by some of the artists. There's also a lovely old engraving of a tiger watching a porcupine, very, very rare to find. I think I spent 9 months looking at everything across the world in every museum till I encountered this one with a porcupine fleek, and it's a really important one because the tiger is very watchful, very wary, not sure what it should do. And then there's my own experience, which comes in 1976, 2 years after Project Tiger was launched. This is Ranthambore's banyan tree, a tiger walking through it. Now the banyan tree has changed shape, so I don't think I'll ever see it in the same form. Mating tigers in Ranthambore. So in a way, it took 5 or 7 years for us to see tigers properly in Ranthambore. It was in the early 80s that the first pictures of what we saw started rolling out. This is one of the landmark pictures where a male, female with 2 small cubs share a water hole. Most people at this time in the mid-80s thought that male tigers kill their cubs, and this wasn't possible. But now more and more, and we'll see it as some of these visuals roll, the male tiger plays the role of a father. He does look after the cubs, and he shares his food with all the families in his range. One of my favorite pictures, that's why it's in the beginning, because I was in those days walking on foot with a forest guard, and this tigress tried to stalk me and came straight towards me, which was the kind of experiences I grew up with in Ranthambore. There were no rules and regulations. No one visited the place. You walked everywhere. You did what you liked. Most of the time you were out at night and never in the day, because tigers were never seen in the day. You had little glimpses of them, flashes of them in the middle of the night. And you saw them with other animals like leopards, bears, sloth bears, because Ranthambore has all these animals. So it was a rich variety of life that engaged me, and completely enveloped my life, much more important than anything I was doing at that time. So I gave everything of my life to it, because I had also Fateh Singh who said, keep coming back. I need your help. Let's work together. Let's see what we can do to put this place on the map of the world. No one would ever believe in the 1970s or early 80s that Ranthambore would be sitting on the map of the world's wildlife, or probably the best destination to see tigers in. These are early pictures when we used black and white film. There was no color slides for me to use. So these are late 70s in Ranthambore. This is a lovely tiger who I really loved, called Jengiz, who mastered the art of killing sambar deer in the water and would give them a good dunking inside the water and drag them out. It was the first time that such behavior was recorded with tigers for the world to see. Tigresses who carried their little cubs, changing the den, because one den becomes suddenly vulnerable and she'll find another den. Incredible little vignettes of this, and this picture is not taken by me, taken by a friend who was there at that time. In fact, this book has a huge section of young photographers of India who had unique encounters of tigers. They're not my pictures, they're pictures from everywhere, and from 3 or 4 really important tiger reserves which have provided all this information. We have another film clip, if he plays it, which is a little bit about family life.